Hey, what's up, guys? This is Steve, No Solo from Outsider Garage. Welcome back to the channel. Been a little while since the last video, and I feel like I keep on saying that every time, but this summer's been a pretty crazy ride. We'll get in more to that later, but I think we're finally done with shows and meets and things like that this year, so we're starting on prep for SEMA right now. But in the meantime, I've been getting a lot of questions about the Samsonas transmission in the R32, so I figured I would make a a functional, informative video of this gearbox, kind of similar to what I did with the T56 and the S1 shifter. So let's start from the beginning. This gearbox is a Samsonas 6-speed sequential close ratio dog box with straight cut gears. I originally decided to go with this box as opposed to the many other options out there, including PPG, Hollinger, Quaife, OS Gicken. I mean, you name it. There's quite a few out there. At the time, this box, from what I had read about and done my research with, required the least amount of maintenance, and also was one of the strongest gearboxes. And quite remarkably, actually, it was also quite affordably priced compared to the others on the market at the time. So I pulled the trigger on this box. I didn't have the greatest experience with purchasing it, but whatever, I'm not going to get into that right now. It's here, and it's installed in the car. So I've had some limited seat time with this so far, so I can't really comment on longevity or race use just yet. However, it is fully configured, and I like I said, I've had some limited seat time. So these boxes are basically like a universal gearbox. Essentially they are. They can be configured in any number of ways for any type of application. You can get different tail shaft adapters for them. You can get different input shaft adapters for them. They come with different bell housing adapters. So what I mean by that is, like, you have the basic, gearbox, and then you can tell them, okay, well, I'm going to put this on an LS engine. So they'll give you an LS adapter on the front of it, so that it will bolt right up to an LS bell housing. So since I previously had the T56 on this, I already spent money on a pretty heavy-duty Tilton triple disc clutch that actually had T56 splines. So I opted to get the T56 bell housing adapter for my Samsonas, despite the fact that it's going into an R chassis with an RB engine. But I had already also had the SFI certified QuickTime bell housing, so I wanted to kind of keep all these things and hopefully just drop everything right in and it would work. And more or less it did. So the box comes to you, and you get like I said, the gearbox, and you get the bell housing adapter. You get some electronic pieces. They do provide a load cell sensor and some shift linkage, and the actual shifter assembly itself, and then there's also a cable and a cable housing that comes along for the neutral and reverse lockout. No cross member is sent with this kit. Now mind you, this is the rear wheel drive kit. This isn't the quote-unquote GTR kit. Samsonas does make a GTR kit, which is a lot more plug and play. I think that the only thing required there with that is an auto bell housing, just so it'll bolt up to the RB. But my kit, on the other hand, was a little bit more complex, and it required some more, time and man hours and fabrication for installation purposes. So I ended up fabbing up a cross member for this, and I had to order a new drive shaft, which I got from a company called Shaft Masters. That's a great company, by the way. I think this is like my third or fourth drive shaft that I ordered from them, not because of like breaking them or anything, but just from different installations and different changing setups constantly. But they do like solid one-piece aluminum drive shafts to spec, so This one got the input splines for, I believe it was the Dodge Viper, because that is the same setup as the T56 in this particular scenario. And then the rear flange was just, I think, similar to I think an S13, which is the same pinion flange as the R chassis for the rear wheel drive. So regardless, that all bolted right up great, no problems. And then wiring was a little interesting. You would expect when you make a big purchase like something like this, that you would get a lot of instructions. Unfortunately, you don't, and you then go to try to look for support, and there's not a lot of support. That was a little frustrating, but all in all, we ended up figuring everything out. Had to look up some manufacturer sensor specifications and things like that to get the correct wiring pinouts. But we ended up doing just fine with that. So we have a, like I said, there's a load cell sensor, and for sequential transmissions, a load cell sensor essentially alerts the ECU that a shift is about to take place. And there's also a gear position sensor, which tells the ECU which gear you're in. So with those two sensors, the ECU is able to determine if you are making a upshift or you are making a downshift, and also into the exact gear in which you're shifting into. So this is done for a reason, obviously. So sequential gearboxes do not have synchros in them. This is a dog box, so it has dog engagement. I'm not going to get into what dog engagement is, but if you can imagine, there's essentially the gears are spinning around and they have teeth on them that interlock with the other gears. And those are called dogs, and they kind of slam together. And when they slam together, it's like instantaneous engagement. Quite a bit different than like a synchro mesh gearbox. So the purpose of those load cell sensors then give the ability to tell the ECU that you're about to make a shift, and the ECU can do some things before that shift takes place in order to allow you to have some really cool features. One of which is probably something that is the reason why everybody wants these things, and that is flat foot shifting, right? So flat foot shifting is being able to shift your car into the next gear at wide open throttle without pressing the clutch in. And this is pretty fast, definitely the fastest shift that I've ever experienced, outside of an tuned like automatic, maybe like a TH400 or something like that. But it is wild. It is wildly fast. Now, if you are using, any kind of aftermarket ECU that has, customization for all these things, you can actually define parameters for all these things, including how it cuts the power instantaneously so the shift can take place, the overall time of the shift, etc. And it is amazing. And then also when you're downshifting, it gives you the ability to do what's called like an automatic throttle blip. And again, this is a drive-by-wire functionality because the ECU is now speaking to the throttle body. And it says, okay, we're shifting, it's going down a gear. So what it'll do is it blips the throttle automatically without you ever having to touch the gas. And it allows you just to basically push the shifter right into, the next gear. And again, that's another amazing function of this gearbox. And I'll do some video, some driving video after this, so you guys can see what I'm talking about as far as flat foot shifting and these automatic throttle blips on downshifting as well. So let me pull this camera back for a second, and I will kind of explain to you about the shifter and pedal positions and different things that are going on here, and show you a bit about what I've done now to incorporate gear position into the Haltech and the Haltech IC7. All right, so as you can see from the previous video with the T56, some things have changed up here. The car has been completely stripped, from the firewall back. The dash is still here, but all of the plumbing, air conditioning, vent work, electronics has all been stripped out in lieu of a brand new custom wiring harness. And you can see here, here is the Samsonas shift knob, or shifter rather. And you can see down here, there's kind of this long bar track here, and these weird little screws popping out of this. If you were to unscrew these, you'll see that there are actually springs inside here on either side, and they act as a return spring. So you can see that the shifter returns back to the quote-unquote, neutral or base position after a shift. From my understanding, I haven't thoroughly looked into this just yet, with a lot of detail, but to my understanding, there can be some sort of a solenoid setup, like a pneumatic solenoid setup on both sides of this bar that allow you to configure a paddle shift. So for instance, you'd have to obviously have a compressor in the car. You'd have to incorporate the paddle shifters, onto the steering wheel. And then there'd be some electronics and some pneumatic solenoid system that would allow this linkage to be shifted from the steering wheel without ever touching it. That's a really cool feature, and chances are, if you're installing one of these in your car, chances are your car has a substantial amount of power or is generating a lot of torque and is very capable. You might find that when you're on the track and you're actually tracking the car and racing it, that having the shifter functionality on the steering wheel itself could be very helpful, especially in cornering and turns as well. So anyhow, back looking at the shifter itself, I mean, this is a beautifully built and designed, it's a billet aluminum shift linkage. It is very tall. This is not like, like if you look at the OS Gicken boxes and even the Hollinger boxes, the PPG boxes, they give you kind of a very small shift knob, but it actually looks quite similar to like a stock shift knob, maybe just a hair taller, and they do have like the lockout lever linkage attached to it. The Samsonas is very large. I kind of like this. It just feels like I don't know, you don't really need to have any sort of leverage ratio over the gear shift at all. I mean, that's not the case, but it does help you, I think, complete a gear quicker and easier than something that would be much smaller. So I do like that. And you can see here that it is got a bit of a skeletonization, so it is pretty lightweight. Now, if you look over here, you can see that there is a there's an actual cable, almost similar to like a bicycle cable that would be controlling the brakes on your bicycle. This cable, and you can see, is attached to this lever here. When you pull this lever up, it pulls the cable up, and this allows the ability for the car to go back into neutral. So right now, I believe I'm in neutral. You can see we put it in gear, and you see it will not go back forward no matter it's being stopped. So by pulling this lever in, it allows you to access neutral, and then again to get into reverse. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to get the ignition on here so we can see what's going on. One thing to note, when you're setting these things up for the first time, and you can see I'm in first gear here now. So one thing to note, and one thing that I discovered while I was setting this gearbox up, is that when you're sitting planted on the ground inside the car, and you want to just go kind of like test things out, the functionality, like maybe you want to see how the this gear position sensor is working, you start to shift, and you can see there that I got second gear, and so okay, so this is what I was getting to. So I can't get third gear here, and at first when I was doing this, that was I was trying to figure out why that was happening. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't access the next gear, and it was a little bit disturbing. But further thought, and obviously going into starting the car and accessing gears when it's running is a completely different story, because what happens is the dogs won't physically be able to engage themselves unless the surfaces are turning down there. So you need to have a clutch engagement, clutch disengaged and you can feel then that it will start to turn the wheels, turn the engine, and like they will engage. So there's nothing to be worried about there. Sometimes you'll be able to access gears when you're sitting still. Sometimes you won't. It all depends on you know, the exact angle of engagement that you have when you stop the car for the first time. So yeah, so you can see with the Haltech IC7 and the gear indicator, you can see this is configured just like I had with the T56 Magnum. Again, this is super cool stuff, and to be quite honest, when you look at this, there's absolutely no way of telling which gear you're in without the car being on and seeing the digital display. So I would highly recommend this, and absolutely, if not this, installing the factory, actually not the factory, but the provided gear position display that they give you, and that's like a little box. That's actually kind of like a little carbon wrapped box or whatever that just displays the gear, you know, up there, and you can mount that wherever you want. So anyhow, this is the whole setup here, and as you can imagine, I mean, you have your 3 pedals down here, you got your clutch. You still need to you know, clutch in order, and then disengage the clutch in order to get the car rolling in first gear. Wide open throttle, you know, flat foot shifts, they only take place, you know, at wide open throttle. So, and then again, that can be configured. So I believe it's like 75 to 100% throttle, you know, your flat foot shifts will take place. When you're not doing that though, you're still, you're clutching in order to shift gears so that you don't damage anything. So that's kind of like something that needs to be learned as well, right? So when you're driving the car, if you're not at watt, you can't flat foot shift. So there is now 2 different ways of shifting the car depending on the conditions, which can get interesting, and it can get a little bit difficult. So spin this back around again, and we'll get into now some of the reasons why having a sequential transmission on a car that's driven on the street is not so good, right? So I've got into this discussion with people before, and I've talked to people who are like, hey, you know, I really want to get a sequential. It is literally the next step. It is an amazing experience. You will be smiling from ear to ear. That being said, it is not a very street-friendly setup for a couple of reasons. So the first reason being is what I just described to you, as far as not being able to shift consistently depending on your speed or your throttle position. So you're going to have to make determinations before each shift. So like if you're going to go wide open throttle, you'll be flat foot shifting. If you're not wide open throttle, you're going to be shifting with the clutch. For the most part, all downshifts that I've seen so far, with the exception of when you're coming to a stop or going relatively slow under low load, you can just use the automatic throttle blips if you have drive-by-wire. But there's a lot of, you know, thinking and you know, muscle memory, planning that goes into place there. And to be quite frank, when you're wide open throttle, I mean, in a lot of horsepower engine with a sequential trans, I mean, things happen really fast, and before you know it, you're at a point where I shouldn't say before you know it, before the blink of an eye, you're at a point where you're no longer legally doing illegal things on the roads. So hence it'd be safer to be on the track rather than be on the road. Number 2 would be that you'll find that with a transmission like this, again, attached up to a high horsepower car, you're probably running some sort of ridiculous, you know, twin or triple disc clutch. These things generally have an on and off type of setting on the clutch. It's either on or it's off. It's engaged or it's disengaged. This can get particularly difficult and a pain in the ass when you get stuck in traffic or you're forced to go slow. Because you're going to find yourself at the mercy of the gearbox and what speed you can go the slowest, which is generally you put it in first gear and you don't put your foot on the gas and you let just the engine RPM control your speed. you'll find that this is too fast a lot of times when you're in traffic, and you're going to end up having to clutch in, and you're going to have to unlock neutral and put into neutral, and you're going to have to roll, and then finally the guy ahead of you starts moving again, so then you have to put it back into gear, and then there's rolling and stopping and rolling and stopping and shifting in and out. And I guess you could say the same thing about any manual transmission, but there's extra steps involved in the sequential. And every time you try to feather a clutch in order to try to maintain a speed that you can't maintain while being in gear, you're putting damage on that clutch, and you're doing things to it that are not meant to be done. These clutches are meant to transfer, enormous amounts of power and torque through from the engine into the drivetrain, and they are not meant to be like feathered. They're meant to go engaged or disengaged. So you're gonna be greatly diminishing the life of your clutch by doing that. So I mean, if these are things that you can overlook, or these things that you can live with, then absolutely, by all means, go sequential and enjoy it, have fun. But I certainly wouldn't want to do it on a car that I would be driving every week on the road, running errands, or even just like a fun car that you hop in and you go visit your buddies and stuff like that. I mean, this is the type of thing that really belongs in the track, and for good reason. So let me just circle back by saying that the Samsonas gearbox so far has been fantastic. It's been awesome. I mean, we haven't had any hiccups at all. That combined with the Haltech Nexus system and the IC7, I mean, this thing is fully configured, and it is an amazing experience to drive. Absolutely amazing. So I mean, we'll do some more follow-ups on this gearbox hopefully soon, and my goal is to give this car a proper shakedown on the track at least once before we head to SEMA. But in the meantime, enjoy some driving video here, and I'll try to show you just what it's like to take this thing for a drive on the street. We'll do a little wide open throttle, a little flat foot, and then we'll do some downshift as well. So let's do it. All right. First things first, let's get strapped in. All right, we're starting up on E98, so it might be a little bit tough to start. Not too shabby today. All right. So we're gonna do a little friendly ride down to the gas station. Hopefully you guys can hear me, and let's get this thing warmed up. You can see right All right, put about 6 gallons of 93 in, and that mixed with probably about a gallon and a half to 2 gallons of E98. So let's see what we got.